Dr. Sarachin stood before the massive display screen at the International Space Observatory, her hands trembling as she studied the data streaming across multiple monitors. The coffee in her mug had gone cold hours ago, forgotten amid the growing crisis that was about to change everything humanity thought it knew about the universe. "This can't be right," she whispered, running the calculations for the 7th time. The numbers remained unchanged, unwavering in their terrifying certainty. Behind her, the observatory's emergency operations center buzzed with activity. Astronomers, physicists, and military advisors crowd around workstations, their faces illuminated by the cold blue glow of their screens. Nobody had slept in the past 48 hours, not since the object designated 3I Atlas had begun exhibiting behavior that defied every known law of physics. Dr. Marcus Webb, the observatory's director, approached with hurried steps. His normally neat appearance had deteriorated into disheveled exhaustion. "Sarah, tell me you found something that makes sense of this." She turned to face him, her dark eyes reflecting both fear and wonder. "Marcus, 3I Atlas isn't slowing down. It's accelerating against the sun's gravity. That's impossible for any natural object." The discovery had begun 3 months earlier when the Atlas Survey Telescope in Hawaii detected an unusual interstellar object entering the solar system. At first, it appeared to be another comet or asteroid from beyond our cosmic neighborhood, similar to Oumuamua or Borisov. The scientific community had been excited but not alarmed. Then the anomalies started. First came the trajectory corrections, small adjustments that could have been explained by outgassing or solar pressure. But as 3I Atlas drew closer to the sun, approaching its perihelion point of nearest approach, the changes became too deliberate, too precise to attribute to natural causes. "Show me the latest readings," Marcus said, leaning over her shoulder. Sarah pulled up a 3-dimensional model of the inner solar system. The sun sat at the center, a pulsing golden sphere. Earth's orbit traced a familiar blue line around it, and there, cutting through space at impossible speeds, was a red trajectory of 3I Atlas. "Current velocity is 270 kilometers per second and increasing," Sarah explained, pointing at the streaming numbers. "At this rate, it will reach perihelion in exactly 72 hours. But here's what keeps me awake at night." She zoomed in on the object itself. The image was grainy, captured by every major telescope on Earth and in orbit. 3I Atlas appeared as an elongated shape, roughly 800 meters long and 200 meters wide. Its surface was dark, almost perfectly black, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. "Its albedo is 0.02, Sarah continued. "That's darker than coal, darker than anything we've ever observed in space. And look at this." She pulled up spectroscopic analysis. Instead of the expected chemical signatures of ice, rock, or metal, the readings showed something else entirely. Patterns that repeated at regular intervals. Structures within structures. Organization at a molecular level that suggested design rather than natural formation. "It's artificial," Marcus breathed. "You're saying this thing was built." "I'm saying it's not from here and it's not natural, and it's coming straight for the sun with purpose." Sarah's voice cracked slightly. But that's not the worst part. She opened another window, revealing electromagnetic readings taken over the past week. Waves of energy pulsed from 3I Atlas in regular intervals, growing stronger as it approached perihelion. The frequencies matched nothing in any database. They weren't radio waves, weren't infrared or ultraviolet. They existed in a spectrum humanity had never encountered. "It's transmitting," Marcus said. "Or powering up. God help us, what do we do?" Before Sarah could answer, alarms erupted throughout the operations center. Red lights flashed as every screen displayed the same urgent message. "Gravitational anomaly detected." Dr. Yuki Tanaka rushed over from the gravitational wave monitoring station, nearly tripping over cables in her haste. "You need to see this now. LIGO is going crazy. We're detecting gravitational waves emanating from 3I Atlas itself." "That's impossible," Sarah said automatically. "Only massive cosmic events generate gravitational waves. Colliding black holes, supernovas, not objects the size of a skyscraper." "Impossible or not, it's happening," Yuki insisted, pulling up her data. The wave patterns were unmistakable, ripples in the fabric of space-time itself, radiating outward from the approaching object. Marcus grabbed the phone, connecting him directly to the emergency response coordinators at the United Nations. His hand shook as he dialed. "This is Webb at ISO. Situation has escalated to critical. We need to convene the Security Council immediately." While Marcus made his calls, Sarah continued analyzing the gravitational anomalies. A horrifying picture was emerging. The waves weren't random. They pulsed in mathematical sequences. Prime numbers, Fibonacci patterns. They were a message, or perhaps a countdown. "Sarah," Yuki's voice was barely a whisper. "Look at the trajectory analysis. Really look at it." Sarah pulled up the predictive models. As 3I Atlas swung around the sun at perihelion, standard orbital mechanics predicted it should slingshot back out into interstellar space, perhaps passing relatively close to Earth but not impacting it. However, when she factored in the gravitational anomalies, the self-acceleration, and the energy emissions, the models told a different story. The object was going to stop at perihelion when it reached its closest point to the sun. 3I Atlas was going to halt its forward momentum entirely. It would station itself between Earth and the sun, positioned at the L1 Lagrange point where gravitational forces balance perfectly. "It's choosing a parking spot," Sarah said, her voice hollow with disbelief. "Whatever this thing is, it's not passing through. It's planning to stay." The implications crashed over her like a wave. An unknown artificial object, capable of manipulating gravity itself, positioning itself between humanity and its source of life and light. The possibilities range from first contact with an alien civilization to an extinction-level threat, and humanity had 72 hours to figure out which. The emergency UN Security Council session convened within 6 hours. Sarah found herself standing before an assembly of world leaders, their faces projected on screens from capitals across the globe. She had never felt more inadequate for a task in her life. "Dr. Chun," the UN Secretary General began, "please provide your assessment of the situation for the Council." Sarah steadied her nerves and began. "Distinguished members, 3 days from now, an artificial object of unknown origin will position itself at Lagrange point 1, directly between Earth and the Sun. Based on its demonstrated capabilities, which include gravitational manipulation and self-propulsion that violates our understanding of physics, we must consider it a potential existential threat." "Potential?" interrupted the Russian ambassador. "Dr. Chun, is this object hostile or not?" "We don't know," Sarah admitted. "It hasn't attacked. It hasn't communicated in any language we understand, but its actions are deliberate and precise. Whatever intelligence controls 3I Atlas, it chose this trajectory, this timing, this location." The Chinese representative leaned forward. "What can we do to stop it?" "Nothing." The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Sarah continued. "Any kinetic weapon we launch would take too long to reach intercept trajectory. Nuclear missiles would be ineffective against something that can manipulate gravitational fields. And we have no idea if attempting to destroy it would trigger a defensive response that could be worse than leaving alone. So we wait," the American president said grimly. "We watch this thing park itself between us and the sun and pray it's not here to harm us." "There is one other possibility," Sarah ventured. "The electromagnetic transmissions, the gravitational wave patterns. They're mathematical, organized. It might be trying to communicate, and we simply haven't figured out how to listen yet." A flicker of hope passed through the assembly. "How long would it take to decode these signals?" asked the Secretary General. "I don't know. Days, weeks, maybe never. We're attempting communication with an intelligence so foreign it can bend space-time. We might have nothing in common, no shared frame of reference." But even as she spoke, Sarah's mind raced with possibilities. Mathematics was universal. Physics was universal. If 3I Atlas was broadcasting mathematical sequences, perhaps that was the key. Not a message in words, but in pure logic, in the language of the cosmos itself. The council debated for hours, ultimately deciding on a dual approach. Military forces would be placed on high alert, ready to respond to any hostile action. Simultaneously, every major research institution would work on decoding the transmissions, attempting to establish communication before perihelion. Sarah returned to the observatory to lead the communication team. She had 68 hours remaining. The work was grueling. Teams operated in 4-hour shifts around the clock, analyzing every pulse, every wave, every variation in the signals emanating from 3i Atlas. They compared the patterns against every known mathematical sequence, every physical constant, every chemical element signature. 48 hours before perihelion, Dr. Emil Rodriguez made the first breakthrough. "The frequency ratios," he shouted, startling everyone in the Quiet Operations Center. "They correspond to electron orbital distances. Hydrogen, helium, lithium. It's transmitting the periodic table." Sarah rushed to his station. Emil was right. Embedded within the gravitational waves were precise mathematical ratios that matched the quantum energy levels of atoms. Whoever or whatever built 3i Atlas knew chemistry, knew atomic structure, and was using it as a foundation for communication. "It's showing us it understands our universe at a fundamental level," Sarah said, her excitement building. "This is deliberate. It's saying, we know the same physics you do. Now we need to respond." They commandeered every powerful transmitter on Earth. Radio telescopes, satellite arrays, even commercial broadcasting equipment. And they sent back their own message, using the same mathematical framework. They transmitted the periodic table, then expanded to include physical constants, the speed of light, Planck's constant, the gravitational constant. 36 hours before perihelion, 3i Atlas responded. The new signal was complex, layered with information. Sarah and her team worked feverishly to decode it. Slowly, painfully, a picture emerged, not in words or images, but in pure mathematical concepts. 3i Atlas was a probe sent from a civilization that existed in a distant galaxy. They had detected signs of technological development in our corner of the universe through the radio waves Earth had been broadcasting into space for over a century. The probe had traveled for thousands of years across the vast darkness between galaxies, propelled by technology that harvested energy from the vacuum of space itself. "They're explorers," Yuki said with wonder in her voice. "Just like us. They want to know who else is out there." But there was more to the message. Sarah's blood ran cold as she decoded the final section. 3i Atlas was damaged. The journey through the intergalactic void had taken a toll. Systems were failing. The probe needed to conduct repairs using the intense energy available at our sun's L1 point. The process would take approximately 90 Earth days. What happens to Earth during those 90 days? Marcus asked a question everyone was thinking. Sarah ran simulations. The answer was sobering. With an 800-meter object stationed between Earth and the sun, partially blocking sunlight, global temperatures would drop, not catastrophically, but enough to disrupt weather patterns, affect crop yields, and create economic chaos. The probe's energy emissions would interfere with satellite communications. Its gravitational manipulations might cause tidal disruptions. Humanity would survive, but civilization would be severely stressed. "We need to tell them they can't do this," Marcus said firmly. "The Council needs to know we can communicate now. Maybe we can negotiate, ask them to find another location for repairs." Sarah shook her head slowly. "Marcus, think about what they've accomplished. They crossed intergalactic space. They manipulate gravity like we flip light switches. If we tell them no, if we're perceived as hostile to a damaged explorer seeking shelter, what do you think happens next?" The weight of the decision crushed down on everyone present. Humanity's first contact with alien intelligence, and it came with an impossible choice. Accept temporary hardship and welcome these explorers, or risk conflict with technology so advanced it might as well be magic. 24 hours before perihelion, Sarah transmitted humanity's response. The message was crafted carefully, reviewed by linguists, diplomats, and scientists, using the mathematical language they had established. Earth communicated understanding. "We know you need repairs. We know this will be difficult for us. We welcome you as fellow explorers of the cosmos. We ask only that you minimize the impact on our world, and when repairs are complete, you share your knowledge with us." The response from 3i Atlas came within minutes. a series of gravitational pulses that translated roughly to acknowledgement and gratitude. More detailed information followed. The probe would orient itself to minimize light blockage. It would adjust its energy emissions to frequencies that wouldn't interfere with our technology. And it would share a gift: the fundamental principles of gravitational manipulation transmitted in mathematical form. Sarah laughed and cried simultaneously. In trying to solve an existential threat, humanity had instead secured its future among the stars. The technology 3i Atlas offered would revolutionize space travel, energy generation, and scientific understanding. As perihelion approached, every telescope on Earth in an orbit focused on a darkened patch of space where 3i Atlas glided silently forward. Sarah stood in the observatory, surrounded by her exhausted but exhilarated team, watching the final approach. 3 minutes to perihelion, someone announced. The probe moved with liquid grace, adjusting its trajectory with pulses of gravitational energy visible as distortions in space itself. The sun's intense light silhouetted the elongated shape, revealing details previously hidden. Panels open along its surface, unfurling like metallic petals, each designed to capture and process solar energy. 1 minute. Sarah held her breath. The mathematical models predicted 3i Atlas would halt precisely at the L1 point, but models could be wrong. If something went catastrophically wrong at this stage, there was nothing humanity could do but watch. 30 seconds. The probe's velocity decreased rapidly, impossibly. Sarah watched the telemetry in awe as 3i Atlas shed thousands of kilometers per second of momentum in a matter of moments, gravitational fields flexing and warping around it like invisible hands applying gentle brakes. 10 seconds. The entire world watched through countless screens. Billions of people held their collective breath, united in this moment of first contact, of cosmic significance, of pure human hope facing the unknown. Perihelion achieved. Velocity 0. Position locked. 3i Atlas hung suspended in space, an ancient messenger from beyond imagination, now stationed between humanity and its star. The sun's light dimmed perceptibly, but not dangerously. The probe had oriented itself to maximize solar capture while minimizing Earth's shadow, just as promised. For several minutes, nobody in the observatory spoke. They simply watched this impossible thing, this bridge between civilizations separated by millions of light years and countless centuries of development. Then the probe began transmitting again. This time, the message was clear and unmistakable. Mathematical formulas poured from 3i Atlas in an overwhelming flood of knowledge. Gravitational engineering principles, energy harvesting techniques, materials science that operated at the quantum level, medical applications that could extend lifespan, environmental restoration methods. It was a gift beyond measure, the accumulated wisdom of a civilization that had mastered the stars. The first week after 3i Atlas stationed itself at L1 was chaos incarnate. Despite the probe's efforts to minimize disruption, the reality of having an 800-meter object between Earth and the Sun proved more challenging than anyone had anticipated. Sarah worked 18-hour days coordinating between the observatory, government agencies, and the growing international consortium dedicated to understanding the alien technology. She barely had time to think, let alone process the magnitude of what was happening. On day 8, she finally took a break, stepping out of the observatory into the strange twilight that had become Earth's new normal. The sun hung lower in the sky than it should, its light diffused and weakened. Temperatures across the northern hemisphere had dropped by an average of 3 degrees Celsius. In the southern hemisphere, entering its summer season, the effect was less pronounced but still noticeable. Dr. James Morrison, a climatologist who'd been seconded to the team, joined her outside. He was younger than Sarah, early 30s, with prematurely gray hair that he blamed on his work predicting climate catastrophes. Beautiful in a way, James said, gazing up at the darkened sun, like a permanent eclipse. Beautiful until the crop failures start, Sarah replied. How bad is it going to get? James pulled out his tablet, showing her updated models. Not as bad as we feared initially. The probe's positioning is incredibly precise. It's rotating slowly to ensure no single region of Earth is permanently shadowed. but we're still looking at reduced agricultural output, particularly for crops that are sensitive to light levels. Wheat, corn, soybeans. The economic impact will be in the trillions. 83 more days, Sarah said quietly. Assuming it leaves on schedule. What if it doesn't? The question had been haunting Sarah since Perihelion. What if 3I Atlas decided to stay longer? What if its repairs revealed more damage? What if the civilization that sent it changed its mission parameters? They were dealing with an intelligence so far beyond human that predicting its choices felt like an ant trying to understand human architecture. We have to trust, Sarah said, though the words felt hollow. They've kept every promise so far. Back inside, the translation team had made new breakthroughs. What started as basic mathematical communication had evolved into something approaching actual dialogue. The probe wasn't just transmitting technical data. It was sharing information about its creators. Sarah stood behind Dr. Yuki Tanaka as she decoded the latest transmission. Images formed on the screen, not photographs but mathematical representations that human computers could reconstruct into visual forms. "Is that them?" Sarah whispered. The image showed a being unlike anything in Earth's evolutionary history. It appeared crystalline, faceted surfaces catching and refracting light. Multiple appendages extended from a central core, each seeming to serve different functions. There was a symmetry to it, but not the bilateral symmetry humans were familiar with. This was something else, radial and complex. "I don't think this is actually what they look like," Yuki said carefully. "I think this is a conceptual representation, simplified so we can comprehend it, like drawing stick figures to represent humans." More images followed. Structures that might have been cities, though they looked more like living crystals growing in organized patterns. Spacecraft that seemed to fold space around them rather than pushing through it. Astronomical charts showing a galaxy cluster Sarah didn't recognize, tens of millions of light years distant. "They're from Abel 2744, Yuki breathed. "Pandora's cluster. That's 3.5 billion light years away." Sarah felt her knees weaken. "That's impossible. Even at light speed, it would take 3.5 billion years, Yuki finished. "But they're not traveling at light speed. Look at this." She pulled up another mathematical expression, one that made Sarah's head spin. It described a method of travel that didn't move through space, but rather moved space itself. The probe hadn't crossed the distance between galaxies. It had compressed that distance, creating shortcuts through the fabric of reality. How long did the journey actually take for them? Sarah asked. "If I'm reading this correctly, about 4,000 years. Their time, for the rest of the universe, billions of years past." The implications were staggering. This wasn't just advanced technology. This was physics that rewrote the fundamental rules humanity thought governed the cosmos. Over the following weeks, more information flowed from 3I Atlas. The probe shared details of its journey, the hazards it had encountered, the reason for its damage. It had passed through a region of space where dark matter was unusually dense, causing fluctuations in its propulsion system. The repairs weren't just fixing damage. They were recalibrating its entire navigation array, using our sun as a reference point. Sarah learned to read the probe's mathematical language like a second tongue. She found herself thinking in gravitational equations, dreaming in spectroscopic curves. The line between her consciousness and the alien intelligence blurred in strange ways. One night, working alone in the observatory at 3 a.m., Sarah noticed something unusual in the transmission. Embedded within the technical data was a sequence that didn't fit any pattern they'd established. It repeated at irregular intervals, almost like music. She isolated the sequence and played it through the audio synthesizer, converting mathematical ratios into sound waves. What emerged was haunting, beautiful, utterly alien. Harmonics that shouldn't work together, but somehow did, creating emotions Sarah didn't have names for. "You're sharing art with us," she whispered to the distant probe. "You're showing us who you are, not just what you know." She recorded her own response, converting classical music into mathematical expressions. Bach, Mozart, Beethoven, but also jazz, blues, traditional songs from every culture on Earth. If they wanted to know humanity, she would show them our soul, not just our science. The next transmission from 3I Atlas included something new, patterns that could only be interpreted as appreciation, perhaps even joy. Two species, separated by impossible distances and unimaginable differences in form and thought, had found common ground in the universal language of artistic expression. But not everyone on Earth was pleased with this growing connection. By day 30, political tensions were reaching a breaking point. The economic disruption caused by 3I Atlas was worse than initial projections. Crop yield were down 15% globally. Energy costs had spiked as nations struggled to compensate for reduced solar panel efficiency. Stock markets were in freefall, and increasingly, voices were calling for action against the probe. Sarah attended an emergency UN session where the atmosphere was drastically different from the first meeting. Then there had been fear, but also hope. Now there was anger. 60 more days of this will destroy our economies, the Brazilian representative argued. Our people are suffering. Food prices have doubled. We cannot simply accept this. What do you propose? The Secretary General asked wearily. We established communication. We agreed to their presence. They've shared technology that will benefit humanity for centuries. Technology we can't use yet, countered the Indian ambassador. Meanwhile, our farmers are facing ruin. Our citizens are cold and hungry. The benefits are theoretical. The suffering is real. General Patricia Morrison, representing the newly formed Joint Space Defense Command, stood to speak. Sarah had met her once, found her to be brilliant but hawkish. We have options, Morrison said. In the past 30 days, we've learned much about 3I Atlas. Its shields aren't impenetrable. Its systems, while advanced, aren't invulnerable. A coordinated strike using everything we have, kinetic weapons, nuclear devices, electromagnetic pulses, might succeed in destroying or disabling it. Sarah jumped to her feet. General, that's insane. You're talking about attacking a peaceful explorer. The repercussions of doing nothing are visible every day, Dr. Chin. Morrison interrupted. I have children. They're cold. They're afraid. The sun is wrong, and there's a monster blocking it. How do I explain to them that we're just accepting this? By teaching them about hope, Sarah shot back. About the bigger picture. About humanity's place in a cosmos filled with other minds. This is temporary difficulty for permanent gain. Easy for you to say from your observatory. Someone called out. You're not watching your crops die. You're not seeing your nation's economy collapse. The debate raged for hours. In the end, no decision was made, but Sarah left feeling sick. The fractures were widening. Some nations were preparing military options in secret. Others were doubling down on cooperation with 3I Atlas. Humanity, faced with proof of alien intelligence, was doing what it did best, dividing into factions. She returned to the observatory to find Marcus waiting with troubling news. We've detected unauthorized transmissions aimed at 3I Atlas, he said grimly. Someone's trying to communicate independently of our official channels. Who? We don't know. The signals are encrypted, bouncing through multiple satellites to hide their origin. But Sarah, they're not friendly. We've managed to partially decode them. Someone's asking 3I Atlas about weapons, about defenses, about vulnerabilities. Sarah's blood ran cold. Someone's trying to figure out how to attack it. Or they're trying to make a deal, Marcus suggested, offering cooperation in exchange for exclusive access to the technology. Either way, it undermines everything we built. Sarah immediately tried to contact 3I Atlas to warn them about the unauthorized communications. The response came quickly, and it chilled her. They knew. 3I Atlas had been aware of the rogue transmissions from the beginning, and more troubling, they understood the danger they represented. The probe was concerned not for its own safety, but for humanity's unity. The mathematical message was complex, but Sarah parsed its meaning. Division among intelligent species often preceded their extinction. The civilization that built 3I Atlas had nearly destroyed itself through internal conflict before achieving the unity necessary for interstellar exploration. They had hoped humanity was past that stage. The current situation suggested otherwise. They're disappointed in us, Sarah said quietly, like parents watching their child fail a test they should have passed. Yuki, working nearby, looked up sharply. What if they decide we're not ready? What if they leave without sharing the rest of their knowledge? Or worse, James added, having joined them, what if they decide we're dangerous? A divided species with technology we're not mature enough to handle. The implications hung heavy in the air. First contact could still fail, not through hostility, but through humanity proving itself unworthy of joining the cosmic community. Day 45 brought catastrophe. Sarah was reviewing astronomical data when alarms screamed throughout the observatory. On every screen, emergency bulletins flashed. Unauthorized launch detected. Someone had fired missiles at 3i Atlas. No, 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 Sarah muttered frantically, pulling up tracking data. 3 nuclear-tipped missiles, launched from a submarine in the Pacific. The submarine had gone rogue, its captain apparently deciding to take matters into his own hands. The missiles would reach 3i Atlas in 18 minutes. Get me the Joint Command, Marcus shouted. Give me anyone who can stop this. But it was too late for recalls. The missiles were on independent guidance, and even if command code were sent, there was no guarantee the road crew would comply. Sarah watched in horror as the missiles climbed toward space, toward the L1 point, toward the peaceful probe that offered nothing but friendship. Humanity's first act of true communication with an alien intelligence was about to become an act of violence. What will they do? Yuki whispered. Will they defend themselves? Will they retaliate? Sarah didn't answer. She was frantically trying to contact 3i Atlas, to explain, to apologize, to somehow prevent the disaster that was seconds from unfolding. The probe responded. Its message was brief, mathematical, and devastating in its simplicity. We understand. We are saddened. We will not respond with violence. 15 minutes to impact, someone announced. Sarah watched the tracking displays. Helpless. The missiles climbed steadily. 3i Atlas hung in space, apparently making no move to defend itself. Was it unable? Or was it choosing not to, even at the cost of its own destruction? Can it survive nuclear detonations? James asked desperately. I don't know, Sarah admitted. Its shields are strong, but we're talking about multiple nuclear weapons at close range. 10 minutes. Across the world, billions watched. The event was impossible to hide. Every telescope, every news organization, every amateur astronomer with a backyard setup could see the missiles climbing. Social media erupted in chaos. Some celebrated, calling it humanity's defiance. Others mourned, knowing this might destroy humanity's future among the stars. 5 minutes. Sarah closed her eyes, unable to watch. In her mind, she composed a message to the civilization that had sent 3i Atlas, a message they would never receive. We're sorry. We tried. We failed. Most of us wanted to be better. 2 minutes. Then something happened. The missiles began to slow. Not dramatically, not with violent explosions, but gradually, as if invisible hands were gently catching them. Their trajectories curved, momentum bleeding away in defiance of physics. Gravitational manipulation. Yuki breathed. It's catching them. Sarah's eyes snapped open. On the displays, she watched as 3i Atlas extended gravitational fields like delicate fingers, carefully redirecting the missiles away from its own position, away from Earth, guiding them into a solar orbit where they would eventually burn up in the sun's corona. Impact in 30 seconds. The countdown continued, but it was wrong. There would be no impact. 10 seconds. The missiles drifted peacefully past 3i Atlas, their course completely altered, their threat neutralized without a single explosion. The probe had defended itself without destroying the weapons, without harming anyone, demonstrating a mastery of physics and a restraint that made Sarah want to weep. A new transmission arrived. Sarah read it through tears, her voice shaking as she translated aloud. We understand fear leads to violence. We hold no anger toward you. We hope you will learn. The weapons have been rendered safe. No retaliation will occur. We continue to hope for friendship. The observatory erupted in a chaos of relief, disbelief, and shame. Humanity had attacked a peaceful visitor, and that visitor had responded with mercy and continued offers of friendship. Marcus slumped in his chair. What have we done? What we always do, Sarah said bitterly. We prove we're not ready. We prove we're still children playing with matches. But even as she spoke, something else was happening. Across Earth, the attempted attack was sparking a different kind of revolution. People poured into the streets, not in celebration but in protest. They marched in New York, London, Tokyo, Rio, Mumbai. They held signs reading "Welcome, not war," and "We are better than this." The rogue submarine crew was arrested. The captain, it turned out, had been part of a radical nationalist group that viewed 3I Atlas as an invasion. His actions were condemned by every major government. Leaders who had been wavering in their support for cooperation now spoke out forcefully for peaceful contact. General Morrison gave a press conference, her voice tight with barely controlled emotion. The attack was unauthorized and criminal. Every member of the Joint Space Defense Command condemns it absolutely. We failed in our duty to protect not just Earth, but the future of human space exploration. We will do better. In the days following the attack, something remarkable happened. The crisis that should have ended first contact instead galvanized support for it. Polls showed overwhelming majorities favoring continued cooperation with 3I Atlas. Donations poured into space programs and research institutions. Children wrote letters to Probe, which scientists painstakingly translated into mathematical expressions and transmitted upward. Sarah found herself reading one such letter from a 10-year-old girl in Kenya. "Dear space friend, I'm sorry some humans were mean. Most of us aren't like that. Please stay and teach us to be better. Please don't think we're all bad." The innocence and hope in those words broke something in Sarah. She sat in her office and cried for the first time since Perihelion, releasing weeks of tension, fear, and exhaustion. When she finally composed herself, she crafted a response to 3I Atlas, not as a scientist but as a human being. "We are deeply ashamed of the attack. We are grateful for your mercy. We are young and foolish and divided. But we are trying to learn. We are trying to be worthy of your friendship. Please be patient with us." The probe's response came within minutes. "We were young once. We made mistakes. We nearly destroyed ourselves. But we learned. We survived. We believe you will too. You have great potential. We see it in your art, your curiosity, your capacity for change. We remain hopeful." The second half of 3I Atlas's stay was markedly different from the first. The attempted attack had served as a strange catalyst, forcing humanity to confront its worst impulses and choose differently. International cooperation strengthened. The nations that had been considering independent military action instead joined a new organization, the Unified Planetary Response Council. Its mission was clear: speak with one voice to 3I Atlas and any future visitors, ensuring humanity presented itself as a unified civilization rather than a collection of competing factions. Sarah was appointed as the Council's chief science liaison, a role that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. She was now the primary human communicator with 3I Atlas, a responsibility that seemed impossibly large. On day 60, the probe's transmission shifted. Along with technical specifications and scientific data, 3I Atlas began sharing philosophical concepts, ideas about consciousness, about the nature of intelligence, about the purpose of exploration itself. Sarah worked with linguists, philosophers, and cognitive scientists to parse these concepts. What emerged was a worldview, if worldview could apply to crystalline beings from billions of light years away, that challenged many human assumptions. The civilization that built 3I Atlas didn't see exploration as conquest or even primarily as scientific investigation. They viewed it as a form of cosmic empathy, an attempt to understand and connect with other forms of consciousness throughout the universe. Every probe they sent was, in essence, an extended hand, an offer of friendship across the void. They're lonely, Sarah realized during one late-night session. They've been alone in their part of the universe for so long. They send probes hoping to find others, to know they're not the only ones looking up at the stars and wondering. Dr. Amara Okonkwo, a philosopher from Lagos who joined the team, nodded thoughtfully. In that context, our attack must have been heartbreaking, not because it endangered them. Clearly they could defend themselves, but because it suggested we might be another violent, isolated species trapped by our own fear. But we changed, James pointed out. We pulled back from the brink. Maybe that's what matters. Not that we're perfect, but that we're capable of growth.